Now, John Key is in China and shortly we'll cross there live to get some insight into what he's up to there. But first, he's walked away from quite a big issue here, the GCSB, and Labour is calling for an inquiry into the appointment process, how it came to be that Ian Fletcher is the top spy, a good friend of John Key's. Grant Robertson joins me now in studio, Deputy Leader of Labour. Thanks for joining us this morning, Grant.
No worries.
So, Labour wants an inquiry. What do you want to know?
I think what we want to know is whether there was a fair and transparent process for appointing Ian Fletcher. And what's come out over the last week or so indicates that there is some considerable doubt about that. We want to know what the impact was of John Key intervening in the process, shoulder tapping his friend. We also want to know what happened to the original process that the applicants for the job thought that they were going to be part of. There's still a lot of unanswered questions.
We've heard from Ian Rennie this week. He has used some interesting grammar. He said he was surprised that the Prime Minister had phoned Ian Fletcher. Do you think that was when Ian Rennie should have perhaps stepped in?
Well, I think Ian Rennie using the word surprise is one of those very diplomatic pieces of language that public servants use. I think what Ian Rennie is saying is that this was a pretty unprecedented move from the Prime Minister, and it fundamentally changed the direction of this recruitment process. John Key came in, tapped a friend of his on the shoulder. 5 days later, that person was the only person interviewed for this job. That's not how the process was originally outlined, and I think John Key's really struggled this week to understand that by doing that, he changed the process, and I think Ian Rennie was signalling that was not something he was comfortable with.
You've worked in Foreign Affairs, you've worked on the 9th floor of the Beehive. What can you reveal about the interface, if you like, between politicians and spies?
Well, I think there's a very particular relationship between the Prime Minister and the Director of the GCSB. I certainly know when I was on the 9th floor, there were occasions when Helen Clark and the then Director of the GCSB were the only people in the room discussing security issues. So that means that that relationship's one that we need to be quite careful about, one where we have to be absolutely confident of the process for appointing the Director and knowing that we've got somebody in that role who is completely beyond reproach. Now, I don't know Ian Fletcher, but as Ian Rennie has put up, the perception that's been created here is one that is now making people raise questions about the GCSB.
So, is it in your knowledge that essentially the PM can say to the head of the GCSB, can you do this? Can you not do this? Well,
I haven't been in the room, obviously, because I wasn't the Prime Minister or the Director, but the conversations that they have are ones about serious matters of whether people will be spied upon, warrants assigned. There is a lot of work done around I guess powers that New Zealanders would want to be used very judiciously, the right to spy on people. And what we now have is a situation where effectively this appointment is now a political appointment. And that's a big shift from previously where the role has been undertaken by people with a military or a security background who are above politics. That's what's fundamentally changed here because John Key intervened and put his guy in for the job.
Can the GCSB say no to the Prime Minister? Do we even know whether the GCSB can do that?
Well, when you look at the GCSB Act, it says that the Prime Minister is in control of the functions of the GCSB. That's actually a different phrasing than almost any other ministerial role in an Act of Parliament. So they have a very key role. They work very closely with the Director of the GCSB. And that close relationship is what's now being raised here because we now know that the Prime Minister shoulder tapped somebody that he'd known from childhood into that role. Perception's incredibly important here in terms of the public's confidence in our security services, and I think that's what John Key has compromised.
Perception, so too perhaps scrutiny, because at the moment what we do know at this what's emerged from this is that there's very little formal scrutiny of the GCSB. Would a Labour-led government look to increase that level of scrutiny?
I think, obviously we're going to have a look at where things are at in terms of our wider security agencies. I mean, let's remember the reason these questions came up is because of discussions about the Kim.com case and how it was that the Prime Minister, the person in control of the GCSB, somehow didn't find out for 6 months about unlawful spying. That's how these questions started. So there obviously are a lot of issues to debate about the future of our security agencies, but the bottom line is New Zealand Islanders need to have confidence that people with such enormous power as the security agencies are operating in a way that is completely in line with the law, and that they know that it isn't politicised as such. That's the perception that's now changing.
Are you saying that Labor would look to review intelligence services with a move potentially to make some changes?
Oh, look, I think we've got to look at the wider picture of how intelligence services are working, and I'm sure that's something we'll address. But right now, what we've got in front of us is a case where we have an appointment process that seems to have gone away from what was originally proposed. And the moment that particularly occurred was when the Prime Minister intervened. That's why we're asking for an inquiry into this particular appointment process, because I do believe by doing that, the Prime Minister has actually made Ian Fletcher's job difficult.
All right, we have to leave it there. Grant Robertson, Deputy Labor Leader. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.